So a little background about me. I am not a hospitality industry guy. I spent 23 years in legal technology. I worked for a company on the East Coast learning the business for a lot of years. And then in 2011, a good friend of mine created a company on our own, just kind of following in the footsteps of what we had learned. And it went really well. It took off. And so I spent, a number of 10 solid years just growing a technology company, selling to lawyers. I was the main sales guy, and that was my main role. So along the way, what I really was struck by is I spent a ton of time traveling in restaurants by myself, and I was always a decent tipper, and I enjoyed that whole process and that sort of thing. And I kept being struck that the servers and bartenders were sort of just stuck with the next person that walked through the door. They had regulars, it was weird. They had people that they wanted to be regulars, but they didn't know how to have that conversation. And as a sales dude, I had 20 tools to help me manage my customers, and they had nothing. And so it just kind of got to the point where we sold and exited our business a couple of times. I still own 1% of it, but I essentially retired from that business last year and just decided to focus on this and build it and get it out there and see how it went. So oddly, yesterday was our 1 year anniversary of being on the Apple App Store. And it's pretty cool. Yeah. I mean, we haven't made it yet, right?
That's an accomplishment in itself, right there.
It felt good to get it there. Like the day that it was actually, you could see it, and my friends could actually go download the shit that I've been talking about for 2 years. It was pretty cool.
What was the legal technology business? Can you just explain that a bit?
Yeah. So. What we did was we managed the data for giant lawsuits. When I first started in the business, it was all paper. So there was, 40 people scanning documents, 50 ladies that would sit there and key in author, recipient name, key dates. They would just sit there and key it all in. And then when email, really took over, we had a program that extracted all that data from the email, from the metadata, and put it into a database that would help lawyers search it so they're not wasting money, looking through actual pieces of paper. So that technology obviously grew and got better over the years. So we had a company that specialized in that process, collecting the data, so all the forensics around grabbing everything on your cell phone, grabbing everything on your computer, going into a giant company and getting all their servers and filtering the data down so we could preserve everything in a certain format that the judge and the court would allow, and they would say, all right, this has all not been doctored, not been monkeyed with, it's all preserved by this company. And then we would help the lawyers get through it and produce it to the other side. So we started that in 2011, and it did really well. We were growing 33% a year for the first couple of years. And we really had zero intentions of selling it or doing anything along those lines. And then we decided to start looking at some VC money and that sort of thing. My business partner at the time went through something pretty traumatic in his personal life, and that sort of changed everything. Then he kind of wanted to take a step back, and so it started making more sense to partner with folks. So we took on some VC money about 3 years in, and then we merged with a competitor, which they were really the bigger ones. So we took a lot of money off the table, and that was when most of my sidekicks took off. And I stuck it out. It was a question of, is this going to work? Are they going to run into the ground? Is it going to flop? And it did pretty well. I had another solid payday a few years later. And I decided to roll the dice one more time this last time, so we sold again. So we went from, 4 of us started in a kitchen to 80 employees to 360 employees, and now the company that owns us has over 3,000 employees.
Wow.
And I still own 1%, but last year it was, now I was just a sales dude, right? Like it lost a little bit of the fun of making the decisions, steering the ship, really getting the people fired up and that sort of thing. So, so that's kind of why I decided to step back. And I still help a couple of my guys that took over my accounts, but I don't do any of that anymore.
Totally good. So didn't mean to interrupt you on.
No, all good.
With me. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's what led me, all those experiences of being on the road for all those years. I just kept thinking and I was like, man, I am not gonna regret one day that I didn't try this. So I hunkered down and started figuring out how to build it. And, I'm not a software developer, I'm not an app developer, any of those sort of things. So it was just kind of trying to figure it out as I went along. My first thing was I got a buddy of mine that helped me design the screens, which I had a good idea, I had it all drawn out, and he had a tool that helped me create all the mapping. So, when you click here on this screen, it takes you to that screen, and this, that, and the other. So we came up with, I think it was like 184 screens. It was a ton. And then I took that and started sort of shopping it around to different developers. Again, all on my own dime. No partners or anything like that. It's just me that owns it and runs it and that sort of thing. So I found some developers in Vietnam. Actually, the company that helped me manage it was based out of New York as well, Agility. So I had some connections there, and essentially what I did, I had a project manager that was in New York, and then developers in Vietnam, and they were kind of helping be the go-between and the language barrier and that sort of thing. And it was a little dicey, right? You never know what's going to happen. Could they steal it? Would they do a terrible job? Would they take my money and it would just not work? And you've heard a million horror stories that it worked out pretty well.
Good.
At the end of the day, I got the MVP set up. There's probably 7 or 8 features that I love that I just didn't put in there because of how expensive it was to build it all on my own, and I wanted to make sure that it worked. So I launched it, and right around that time, I really started getting heavy into NFTs and that sort of thing, and really trying to understand that market. Which I don't know, do you know who Gary Vee is? Gary Vaynerchuk?
Yeah, of course.
So I was a big fan of him for the last several years, and so I kind of had this plan in mind, to one day try and figure out how to meet this dude and pick his brain and that sort of thing. And then I was sort of paying attention to and getting into NFTs, and then he launched his big NFT project that ultimately I bought a brunch bear that gave me access to Gary a couple times. And so it was cool. I got to go sit down and have brunch with, I think there were 7 of us, 7 other dudes. And we got to each spend 15-20 minutes asking Gary some questions. And my main question was, what do you think of Sit With Me? And he loved it. He thought it was a great idea. And so after some advice from him and kind of what to do, I sort of had been on that path anyway because I've watched his shit a million times. And so I had started making TikToks, and I'd started getting on social media, and I started doing all that stuff. And then, long story short, that led me to kind of approaching one of his groups called the Sasha Group, the small business group, and hiring them to sort of help me navigate some of this stuff. And I think, my intuitions and what I've been doing along with my nephew Dakota, who's 30 years old now, he helps me do a lot of this stuff. And so he and I kind of became the team to create sort of our marketing program through TikTok, Reels, Facebook to some degree. And then we're getting some help from the Sasha Group, who is sort of doing some of the blocking and tackling, doing some of the community outreach, doing some customer interviews for us, and helping us with ideas to make content, that sort of thing. So right now, 1 year in, we've only got about 3,300 downloads, which is lower than I had wanted, but it's a big shift in the mindset. I almost want to equate it to like an Uber. Like, you're not gonna. 10 years ago, you never thought you would go jump in somebody else's car and take a ride. Or Airbnb, you weren't going to rent your house or your apartment out it's and now everybody of course thinks it's a great idea. So it's very similar in that the servers that I'm talking to, or even some of the customers, they're like, we're not supposed to be that personal. You're just supposed to bring me my food. But really, a lot of people want that interaction. A lot of people, when they go out, they would love to be treated like family. And a lot of servers, if they've got good customers and good tippers, they would love for those people to know when they're working and come back. So it's almost like an unspoken kind of rule. And then you get into the whole tipping thing, which is weird. How you gotta close the book, you flip the receipt over, and then you scurry out the door before the waiter sees what your tip was. So and then one thing I didn't know was tipping culture. There's people that just straight up are assholes about tipping. They just won't do it. And I always knew, I guess there was a few people like that, but if you look at the venom in my comments about tipping and all, I could go on and on. And so that was kind of cool for me because I was like, well, wait a minute, that sucks. Those people are just kind of assholes. They're just, they're not being good people. And so that gave me something to sort of focus on the being the champion for people that are working for $2 an hour here in Indiana. I know it's different all over the place, but they live off of tips. So anyway, it's going well. I'm having a blast. I absolutely love what I do now. I'm just not making any money yet, really. I got a little bit of money coming in from subscriptions. So that's probably the next question, you guys. Ultimately, I can sell ads on it. I haven't yet. I've taken the early Facebook model of I just want it to be cool. But I could start doing that at some point. But really what I'm trying to do is build it from a subscription standpoint where the customer can see today's schedule for free. So if you're working tonight or lunch today or whatever, I could see that no problem. But if I want to plan my week out, then it's a monthly or yearly subscription fee, it's only $1.99 a month, so it's not a ton. My theory's always been, go ahead.
So your core target customer is the individual consumer, not the server?
Well, so you gotta have both, right? So I need the servers on there for the app to be good.
Totally.
So it's free for them. So they can create a profile, no charge at all. Now they can flip over and become a customer, and then they could pay to see future schedules as well. But for the server, they can get on there, they can create their own profile. And that's all completely free. And it's free for the customer as well. The customer can get on there, have a profile, and they can see today's schedules. So, the reality is everybody that goes out to eat or works in the restaurant industry is a potential customer. That's too broad of a market to really try and hit, which is what we started doing early on. We've sort of tried to narrow our marketing toward super servers, the server that, as I've kind of coined them, the servers that get it and that want to have those great customers, that want to be a bit of a salesperson, that realize that they're not just shuffling food around, right? So the people that kind of get it, and they're more career people, lifers, that sort of thing. That's probably the target on that side. Then you got regulars. People know that there's regulars and that they are a regular of a certain spot, so that becomes a target. And then I've tried to shoot for some small business, type of smaller restaurants that could use the help in a marketing standpoint. Like, if you have 10 servers on there, that's 10 salespeople that are interacting with good customers every day. And then the app will push a notification to each customer every day when their favorite server shift starts, and that opens up the communication, and they can become salespeople. So if I'm at some pub up the street and I've got 10 servers on there and a couple of bartenders, those people are interacting with good customers, which should raise the base of the regulars that just show up on a regular basis.
It's organic marketing, definitely.
Yeah, exactly.